Hey, what is up, everybody, and welcome back to episode 44 of the LoofCast. How are y'all doing today? It is currently the middle of the fucking night for the both of us, because we are really bad at doing episodes. I need you all to understand that it is currently February 28th for me, and it's like 11 p.m., and it's February 29th for him, and it's 2 a.m. This episode is supposed to go up in exactly 13 hours.
I've worked for the past 8.5 hours.
Yes. No, we've been like utterly fucked on our schedules, and it's been a great time. The last 2 weeks of work, some I can say publicly, some I can't, has just been like utter bullshit left and right. Funny enough, you want to know a great story before we get into the topic today that happened exactly 24 hours ago, pretty much?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
All right. So, for those who know me personally, my normal work schedule is Friday to Monday. I work Friday closing, Saturday closing, Sunday closing, and Monday closing. And that's just what I do every day, like every Friday to Monday. And then I have Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday off where I'm doing like school or other shit or working on content or working for Thirst Project, because that's also what I'm doing now. But it's all that's going on, right? So I would love to highlight a glorious situation that occurred this past Tuesday, and by Tuesday I mean yesterday. Now,
of course,
last Thursday I stopped into work, mostly because I needed to ask some questions, but two, because I just needed to buy a bag. But I stopped into work to ask a question because one of my punch changes had been denied for some reason, and I was like, I wonder why it was denied. Because in short, I had forgotten to clock out until I was halfway on my drive home. I hit a red light, and then I thought about it. I was like, oh, I haven't clocked out. Fuck. And I clocked out while I was sitting in my car there at the red light. And I changed it to 15 minutes earlier to when I actually left the store. But then they denied it, and I was like, why did they deny it?
Yeah.
Now, most of the time, if I worked for a larger corporation, I would have just been like, fuck it, I'm not changing that shit. They're not going to know. Sort of thing, because fuck larger corporations. But I work for a very small retail company, and I mean, it's like a great group of people, so I wasn't going to jeopardize either A, my own job, or just be like a dick about that. So I was like, I'm gonna go ahead and change it, and they denied it. I was like, I wonder why. So I stopped in to ask about that, and it was a whole thing. But while I was there, my manager asked me if I could cover a shift next Tuesday and basically just help the other person close, because if I hadn't come in, it would have been just my manager and one other person. But Tuesday was also my manager's birthday. So,
nice.
I wasn't going to be a dick and say fuck no. But so I ended up coming in, right? My shift was from 2 to 8 p.m. because I had to deal with some stuff earlier. And basically, yeah. So I come in, it's the shift's going fine, everything's kind of just left and right kind of bullshit, stuff's going on. We're doing our best to get stuff done. And my manager heads out around 5:30. So, that's that. We're steaming along just fine. There's a couple hiccups here and there. And eventually, my store closes at 8, by the way, but eventually 7:51 rolls around. And I'm sitting there counting a reg while the only other coworker in my department is ringing people up at the end. And all of a sudden, while I'm I have a handful of dimes sitting on the counter as I'm counting them. And all of a sudden, to my right, I hear the security towers go off. And I'm like, okay, maybe one of us forgot a security tag, or maybe somebody got a little too close to the towers, because that happens pretty regularly. But I see this woman just walk past nonchalantly, and I'm like, oh, that's a little strange. So my coworker turns to her and says, hey, hang on a second. And the lady pauses, turns around to look at us, and immediately, I didn't hear this part, but apparently this is what happened. Basically, she looked at my coworker and just screamed the words, fuck you, at her, and ran out the door.
Nice.
And immediately I'm realizing, great, I'm the only person who just I'm the only person fast enough for this shit right now, and I'm the only person who just witnessed this alongside my coworker. And she's with a customer, but also it's I'm not about to send her out into a darkened parking lot to chase this person down.
Yeah.
Because for other context, I work in a national park, so there's not streetlights. There's light pollution laws there. It is dark as shit. So I'm great, I'm just going to have to go deal with this. So I basically drag all the coins into the drawer that's open below the counter, spilling half of them, and I slam the drawer shut, and I take off running down the counter. This just gets worse and worse, right? I go past her, I turn to my coworker, and I look at her, and I'm like, call police right now. And I bolt out the front doors into this darkened lot. Now, keep in mind, there's 6 lights in that lot. So it is not easily visible at all. And for someone who has horrible vision in the darkness, I can barely see when I'm out here. And I'm just like, this is bad already. And I'm the only person chasing her down. So basically, I grab my radio, and I get on the radio. I'm like, hey, managers, shoplifter just ran out. I'm in pursuit. And I spot her, like, running under a streetlight by the bus stop. She is, at this point, across the entire parking lot, which is like 300 meters long, I think, or something like that. And I take off running into the darkened lot after her. So, keep in mind, person with horrible dark vision, a bad lung, and a bad knee is now chasing the shoplifter through the parking lot. But she gets to this part, like the part of the park on the other side from the lot, which has even less lights than the parking lot. So I, like, by the time she gets to that park, I've caught up to her. I'm like 15 feet behind her, chasing her into the park now, which is just great.
Oh yeah.
And I'm chasing her up this path, which, you know, I can barely see on, but I'm, like, keeping a, like, very bare eye on her silhouette at this point. And one of my managers, but at this point, 3 people are on the phone with the police dispatch in the park. Like, so my coworker at the counter and the 2 managers have all called dispatch, and they're like, hey, we're trying to figure out what's going on. They're radioing me, asking me for answers. One of the other managers has now chased me out into the lot because he's trying to find where I am now because I'm chasing this lady. So basically, I'm chasing this lady who just stole from us. And my manager's now chasing me, trying to figure out where the hell I am. And I'm getting there's calls on the radio left and right, basically just being like, it's where is she? I'm running through park name, like this part of the area, and like chasing her up this thing. And eventually, my manager catches up with me when I take a spill. And that's because my knee just kind of decides to fuck up, and I end up rolling on the ground. And I immediately just got back up and she kept chasing. But I kept running, and eventually I saw her climb this last stairwell to the top of the park. But now keep in mind, the top of the park here is like flat, complete flat. Like there's some benches, but there's nothing to hide behind. And you couldn't clear that park in 3 seconds. So I get to the top of the stairwell like 3 to 5 seconds after this lady has just disappeared over it, and she is nowhere to be seen. So my immediate assumption, I'm like, there's no way she's cleared this fucking park in the time it took me to get up here. Where is she? Yeah. So we start walking around looking for her. My manager's walking towards the side of the park. I'm walking around the general field, seeing if maybe she's hiding behind a bench. Until eventually we meet up near this little hillside that was like just to the left of the stairs, and we hear rustling in the bushes. This lady has jumped down a hillside to get away from us. So now me and my manager are standing there, and we have our phone flashlights up looking down the hill. We're just like, where the fuck is this lady? And I know I work in a national park, but there's nothing large enough to make the amount of crunching noises other than a human. So we know she's down there. And eventually the store radios us. At this point, we're maybe half a kilometer from the store. And, you know, the store's radioing us. They're like, hey, the cops are here. Where do you want us to send them? So we tell them where to send the cop. And eventually this lone lady cop walks up. And my manager goes to meet her on the other side there while I'm still over here. And he points down towards like the area where like we think she's down there. And she pulls out this bright-ass flashlights looking for her. She's like, please come out and all that. And eventually I see her silhouette. She's hiding behind a tree. So I point down there and I look at the cop. I'm like, hey, behind the tree there. And all of a sudden this lady makes a bolt up the hill towards me. So...
Oh, great.
Yeah, I'm still standing there as she's coming up. And I'm just like, okay, this is how it's going. Cool. And she just kind of gets up right just about next to me, and I'm like, listen, just give us the shit back and we'll stop chasing you. Like, literally, that's all we want. Yeah. And I'm not about to go back to my CVS days, because at CVS they were a lot more chill about this type of thing, but I was not about to deck this lady in front of a cop and in front of my manager. I easily could have. She was within 5 feet of me, but, like, I was not about to do that in front of my manager and a cop. So she bolts past me, and I'm just like, great, whatever. And I back up to the side of the path, and this cop runs past me like 3 seconds later. And they just chase each other for about 30 more feet before the lady like puts her hands up. It's like, I'm sorry. And like the cop's like, get on the floor now, motherfucker. And we end up getting the shit back. She stole like 2 ski jackets and a purse, which was like so stupid. But it was just a really entertaining ordeal.
Oh yeah, I bet. Yeah, that's that's quite the fucking story there, bud.
It's always fun. This is my second time chasing a shoplifter out of the store, but it's been wild.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But yeah, welcome to the Back to the LoofCast. How have you been?
Yeah, welcome back. Well, I don't have a chasing down shoplifter story. You know,
It's rough.
I have a story, an interesting story to tell. Not really.
That's fair.
You know, if you're a sports fan, things are heating up. It's the NFL off season right now. The table's going on in Premier Soccer. I don't know anything about soccer, but you know.
That's valid. That is
If
valid.
you're for all RLCS, oh boy. For context, right now in RLCS, all the big teams that we thought were just going to be dominating and good aren't. And there's about one or two that are actually just playing like we expected them to.
Damn.
The rest of them are
All getting sunned.
For context, Vitality, who won every single one of their regionals.
I was going to say, he was the one you mentioned a couple episodes ago, right?
Yeah, Zen, that guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in their first regional this year, they only placed top 4.
Yeesh.
Which is okay, fine. Pretty good for them.
Yeah, it's not the
but
worst
then they
thing.
But then Luci, they finished 8th. Luci, they're on brink of elimination. They may not make it to the major if they're not careful.
Yeah, no, that's fucking rough. Holy shit.
They go from winning world champs to not even making it to the major. Are you kidding me?
That's a rough fucking season, dude. Jesus Christ.
So, yeah, it's quite the mess right now. My favorite team.
I feel it.
My favorite team, the Falcons, are doing great actually. Mena,
that's a plus.
The region is on the come up. Let me tell you, there's so many good players, so many. I'm very excited.
Hell yeah, though. That's fucking awesome. Well, not for Vitality, but for your team.
Fuck Vitality. So
understandable.
Zen,
but
I will say, I gotta show you a picture. I don't know who cut Zen's hair, but they fucked that man up. Jesus Christ, man. I honestly think it's hurting his confidence because he used to have like curly hair, right?
Yeah.
Kind of like you, but a little bit more. Add more curls to it. If you mixed my hair and your hair together, that's what his hair was.
Okay.
He shaved it.
Like complete bald.
He shaved it. Not shaved it to like bald or like buzz cut, but like very, very low. And you know, the very thin hair as well. It just doesn't look good.
That's rough. Like I've got pretty thin hair, like sometimes. It's not good when it's like extremely short.
Yeah. But anyway, this is kind of going on the topic at hand here because we've gone on a couple tangents here, but it has. That's podcast.
I was gonna say that's like the staple of the LoofCast. We just go on random fucking tangents for like the first 15 minutes, and then we do 45 minutes of actual topic.
Well, so today's topic, I brung this up after the last episode that we recorded because we kind of started to talk about it, but we really didn't get too deep into it. Obviously, we had the guest on, so we wanted to keep the conversation about
Eden
her,
and Camo,
which Eden was great.
She was amazing,
wonderful,
dude. She's like, I met her at TwitchCon personally. She was a great person, like all around. She's probably one of the most fun guests we've had.
Yeah, 100%. So today it's gonna get a little serious, so I'll give you a warning here. If you're looking for a podcast to get you up, this episode may not be the one.
This is not it. I'm gonna tell you this right now. It's gonna be a little serious, little bit mental health related. So if that's not for you, skip this episode and we'll see you on March 15th.
And exactly, we might get into some touchy subjects. So if you don't want to hear that right now, there's no problem. We're not gonna blame you. Require you to listen.
We're not gonna blame you or anything. We will see you. March 15th. This isn't for you. That's totally fair.
With that being said, today's topic is ADHD paralysis and how detrimental it can be to a person with ADHD, like both of us. And
Yeah.
we're kind of coming to talk about our experience with it because
I even just want to say like how
it's
detrimental
rough, man.
Yeah. I even just want to like mention like briefly just how detrimental it can be like being caused by other people too. Like it's not even just like an ADHD specific like person thing. Like it doesn't just happen because you have it, but like outside sources can fucking like just trigger that shit in you, and it's not fun.
100%. So I think the best way to start with this is let's start with maybe a lot of people. I know
Let's start
a lot
with
of
this.
our audience.
What is
Let's be
ADHD
honest.
paralysis?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
Yeah.
I
Let's
know a
start with
lot of
this.
our audience is, ADHD, things like that, right?
They're
But
neurodivergent, but for
people
a
that
lot of
don't.
neurotypical people or people who just don't have ADHD in our part of our audience, ADHD paralysis, in short, is basically it. The way I'm about to say this, I know a lot of people are immediately going to jump on and be like, "Oh, it's just laziness," and no, it's not. ADHD paralysis, in a sense, is a higher form of laziness. Because here's the thing: there's not a sense of like laziness to motivation. It's kind of just this whole gray area. Like imagine one day you're working, you're really passionate about something, and you're really loving what you do, and all of a sudden that ADHD paralysis hits. Everything in relation to that shit just turns gray. Like
Think about
you
it.
don't hate it, but you don't love it. You're just kind of there.
Think about it. Yeah. Think about it this way, right? Imagine you had. Imagine you're walking in a straight line, right? And your goal is to touch the wall, right?
Yeah.
Laziness would tell you, yeah, but I don't want to touch. I don't want to touch the wall. I don't feel like it. Right?
I don't feel like doing
There's
that.
something I don't want to do. I don't feel like doing it. So I'm going to go do something else. Paralysis is
can't.
I'm going to stare at this wall for the next 24 hours with no sleep, not eating, not thinking about anything else but the tasks that I need to do.
Yeah. And it's
Problem
just
is,
and the whole time is that you just
brain-
can't.
My brain physically won't let me do it.
Yeah.
It is stressing so much about the task that I cannot focus on the task itself.
Yeah. It's in like the shortest description there is for it. It's basically just overthinking yourself into a paralysis. So basically your brain, for example, say like, take like human body movements. Your body can overwork itself into a point where you physically cannot do this anymore. And the brain does the same thing with people with ADHD. Your brain will run rampant because it's basically a machine. It will run rampant thinking about how you have to do this to the point where it basically would just be like, okay, I won't let you do this because we're stressed about you having to do this. So you can't do it, therefore the stress is eliminated. And it's not. So it just gets stuck in this endless cycle of, if you do this, if you try to do this, you're going to be more stressed. So I'm going to not let you do it to eliminate the stressor. But the stressor is there because now you can't do it. And it just gets stuck in this endless back and forth cycle of, why can't you do this?
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, that's a legitimate question that they ask like ADHD people. I guarantee you, Oof's been asked it a bunch of times. I know I have. People are just like, why can't you do this? And like, it's impossible to explain to somebody who doesn't have ADHD because they're just like, oh, that's just laziness. And it's like, no, like genuinely, I can't do this.
Yeah, and so even some people that do have ADHD. For context, a family
I
member.
will say, not everyone with ADHD is affected by this.
Correct. I have to sneeze. Hang on. No, come on, please. Please, no. No.
The sneeze is going.
Oh my god, no, nose feels itchy. All right. A family member of mine has ADHD. Right. But the problem with this family member is, again, I don't think he's ever experienced things like ADHD paralysis. Or if he has, he didn't understand, right? He a lot of the time he would say I don't care about something, or I don't ever think about other people. I'm very selfish. When that's not really the case.
No, it's not.
It's just the fact that, for instance, I forgot to take out the dishes, right? Or something like that, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, I did forget to take out the dishes, and I was probably thinking about taking out the dishes all day before I went to work. And then right when I needed to actually crunch time to get it done, it didn't happen. You want to know why? Because I was like, okay, wait, it's 3 o'clock. I gotta go to work. I have to focus on going to work. So then that takes away from the tasks at hand that you must do. Then you forget about it, and once it leaves your mind, it's so hard to get back. So hard.
No, yeah, easily. Like, it's something, the second you forget it, you are fucked.
And it's so frustrating, man. Especially when it comes to school. That's why.
That's the thing.
I
People always just assume, like, that's one thing that, like, drives me insane, is because people just assume that people with ADHD are horrible students. And it's like, here's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to sound egotistical here, but I'm not a dumb person. Like, I'm relatively intelligent. And, like,
oh, yeah.
Given, like, yeah, like, Oof can vouch for this shit. We've had some conversations. I, like, neither he or
I'll straight up be a little egotistical here. I am above average intelligent, for sure.
Both of us are, easily. Right. Like, here's the thing. Yeah, the conversations 100%. We've had, I can say, like, with confidence, Oof and I are not dumb people. We are relatively, and honestly, I would say pretty well intelligent, like, when it comes to a lot of different things. Like, there's a lot of things that he and I have worked on together and separately that can both show and, like, showcase our intelligence very well. And it's like, the thing is like, go ahead.
I think one of the biggest things that we have is we have this thing called common sense.
Also true.
It's crazy. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah, it's like I've been told, like, in my life a lot, like you know, that, like, maybe school isn't for me because, you know, I'm, like, really fucking bad at it. And it's like, yeah, maybe it's not. Yeah. But at the same time, it's like, I would do well in school would it not be for ADHD, because the paralysis hits me the most during that. Like, here's the thing. I can knock out the first 4 months of a semester, 0 issue. Like, I will not have a single problem knocking out the first 3-4 months. And then that final month and a half hits, and I just, like, drop off a fucking cliff. And I'm just like, okay, every single task I'm doing right now feels like 16 times as painful. It's like, my brain stresses out so much. I can't do it all of a sudden because I'm just like, shit.
And this is what I want to talk about, because we have a slightly different experience. The way I experience it with school is I'll get a really good start, right, the first 2 or 3 weeks, and then through 3 months of the class, I'll just give up, right?
Yep.
I have no motivation to do any of the work, especially about how it's being taught. I take a lot of online classes because of the curriculum I'm in for digital video technology, which is a fancy word for graphic design, editing, filmmaking, shit like that, right?
Everything you do in digital media.
It's the behind scenes. It's behind scenes, basically. Yeah. But because of that, and because I go to a community college in my area, a lot of the classes do not have classrooms, and they have online because the teachers teach multiple classes, or they're just set courses like the one I'm taking now. It's a presentation class. Yeah, but it's literally I sit there and read a textbook, do a project, turn it in.
And it's just rinse and repeat.
Do an exam, turn it in.
Yeah, it's
do a project again, turn it in. It's so awful, man. It's so awful. It is so hard to learn, to figure out your way of learning and try to even apply that, especially in the college world. Because once you find your way, it's good. But then you run into a class like I have right now, and then you're like, shit, I have to learn it in a very complicated way that
doesn't work.
Sure, I may be used to, but it
doesn't work,
man. It just doesn't work, and I just sit here and fucking struggle.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I'll say this right now. Like, I've gone through 2 different types of ADHD paralysis when it comes to school. One is the aforementioned one that I've already spoken about. But the other is like I could be doing fine like the entire semester, and then all of a sudden I miss one assignment and I crash and burn.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's bad
because
because like the thing, yeah, no, it's bad because like here's the thing, like the thing with like ADHD paralysis is like there's no like hair trigger for it. Pretty much anything could be it. Like you have no idea what the hell the trigger could be, but the second it happens, you crash and burn, and it's like there's almost nothing you can do to stop it. Which is probably the most frustrating part about it to me, is because like I know when I'm in an ADHD paralysis, but the fact that I can't do anything to change it is what like drives me fucking mental. Because I'm just like, all right,
that's exactly.
Yeah, because I'm sitting there, I'm like, all right, cool, I'm in ADHD paralysis, and I'm a very kind of like, all right, I have a problem, let's solve it, like person. I'm like a very kind of like, I'm not gonna sit here and like and mope about it. I'm not just gonna be like, all right, well, ADHD paralysis, it's time to sit here for 5 months, and I don't just do that. I'm just like let's try and solve it, and there's no immediate kind of just, all right, instant fix, we're good.
Mm-hmm. And I think like you, I think we have that same feeling of, there is so much we could have done. I think we could have been, especially with things like this podcast and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
If we did not have that paralysis, I think we would be way farther ahead. I'm not saying we haven't come far at all.
We have come far is the thing. But here's the thing. I want to say
especially
this.
you've done a whole lot in the last few years, but it's just
we'd be a lot farther
if
because
we
the
were
thing
able,
is we've been doing this for 6 years together. Like not the podcast alone, but creating content together. We've been doing this for 6 years. And there's something to be said about like the amount of effort we've put in, but it's like the thing is that the paralysis keeps knocking us back at like the most vital moments. And that's what's like the most painful part of it.
That's the most painful part, is right when we get our groove, right when we get our stride, right when
paralysis
we're
kicks
all
us right
ready
in the
to
throat.
go to keep going in, it kicks us right, and something happens in life, and paralysis kicks us right in the throat, and we just can't do anything about it.
No, yeah, not at all. And I mean, like, a great example of this from this podcast itself, actually, is I'm sure a lot of you remember this from 15 episodes ago or something like that. But I said I would start doing, like, socials, Twitter, TikTok. I haven't done a single fucking one.
Yeah.
Like, I posted, I think, 3 videos on the old TikTok before we rebranded, and that was it. And it's like, and that goes to show just how bad ADHD paralysis is because I'm in the back of my mind, I'm like, all right, I know I have to do this. I have ADHD, like, I have to get this stuff done. And then, like, my brain overstresses about it. I'm like, what moment's good enough? What about this? Why, like, how often should I upload? What do I have to do with all this? And my brain just goes back and forth trying to de-stress itself, and it just shuts down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, Lucy, I have... Let's see. I'm going through my metal clips here. By the way, just a quick little, not to get too addy here, but if you ever want to see, like, if you're bored and you like our content and stuff like that, and you just want to see like little clips of shit that we do and that I do, I post metal clips all the time.
Yes, and if you don't know what metal is, it's basically an auto-clipping software for your PC, but it's also a social media. Oof does post a lot there. I can vouch for it. Not to be like an ad thing, but it's a great program. I use it. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mainly use it as a clip storage space, so it isn't like content. I'm not making it to make it high quality. It is just there to store moments, pretty much. But
yeah, and it's usually used in stuff where you're not recording or streaming. It'll run background, and then it's like, say you hit something that you love while you're not recording or something like that. Hit a hotkey, it's clipped.
Ta-da. I have a backlog of 18 TikTok ideas. 18.
Yep.
That are ready TikTok ideas. I have them all written down of what exactly I want, and I can't do it.
No, yeah, I feel it.
I can't set the time to actually do it.
No, I feel it. It's a problem. Like, that's my thing, is like a lot of my TikTok and YouTube shorts people have seen, like a lot of what people have seen on my YouTube and TikTok shorts is that, like, they'll see just like moments from stream, and I will fully admit a lot of those are just from Eclipse, like that AI clipping software that we interviewed a while back. Like almost all of them are from that, and it's the problem for me is the fact that I just cannot like get my mind to wrap around the time to edit and everything, and to get all that done. And like my paralysis has gotten so bad to the point where I was doing like shitty on time frames for videos and stuff. I had to hire an editor. Like that's how bad my paralysis for editing has gotten recently. I was like,
yeah,
I can't.
And that's saying something because I used to be his editor, and the problem with us, I think
the problem with us is that it's two ADHD paralysis people trying to work together.
Yeah, it's two ADHD paralysis people trying to work together. And yes, for things like streaming and stuff, that's easy to do because all we got to do is set it up, play games, talk to chat, fine. Yeah. It takes a mental toll, but we can get it done.
It takes a mental toll, but it also doesn't take nearly as much of it as editing. Like, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Say, man. I could do an 8-hour stream. I could do an 8-hour stream, and that's 8 hours of content that's out. I could spend 8 hours editing.
8-hour editing session?
Here's the thing. But here's the thing. That's 8 hours of content from a stream. But I could do 8 hours of editing, and I might not even be done with one video. Like, yeah, that's how painful it is. Like, I'm going to tell you this right now. Like, this is an hour-long podcast, right? My editing times on our podcast average out at about 3 hours. Why? Yeah. Because I have to go through and do audio corrections. I have to go through a bunch of other things. I have to make sure that there's no accidental moments where we've had to cut and so forth. And it's like, and I have to rewatch the whole thing every time I edit it. So, like, on average, 3 hours. But there have been times I remember spending 7 hours on one of our podcasts before. And it's like, and that was just like hell because it was 7 hours straight.
I don't know if this will ever come out, so I won't say the name of the game. But there was a series that I was working on for you, Lucy. Yes. And there's literally an edit. It is a very simple edit. All it is Lucy missed a very obvious double jump, right? Yes. And I literally just put the text, locked it on the rock, and write the easiest double jump in the world as Lucy misses it. And all I wanted to do was lock it on the rock so it didn't move, right?
And it's painful.
Because Lucy plays on a controller and he looked away about 3 times while I think it actually took me 6 hours to get that at 5 seconds. To get 5 seconds right. It took me 6 hours of doing the tracking right. And I'll fully admit, I suck at editing. All right.
Here's the thing.
I'm very much an amateur, but still, man.
I was gonna say, here's the thing. Neither of us are like the best editors out there. Like, I'm not gonna say it. Like, I'm a god awful editor. I can't do any of these like funny moment things. Like, half the time it's just simple cuts and like simple tracking that I do. And even then, the tracking takes me like for a 3 second clip. Tracking for that takes me on average 30 minutes, and that's just because of how bad I am at it. Because if I try and speed through it in 3 minutes, it's gonna look like dog shit, and I don't want to do that. Like, the other side of it. Like, here's the thing: the other side of ADHD paralysis is, I'm not sure if this has like a legitimate condition name or anything, but like what I call it is like the ADHD perfectionist. Another aspect of paralysis is the fact is if you can't do it perfectly, your mind will shut you the fuck down. And it's like, and there's nothing you can do, because it's like if you can't get it to look right, ADHD paralysis just kicks in. It's like, all right, well, you can't make it perfect. You're done. And it's like,
and see, that's the problem nowadays. With I've told you guys before that I've wanted to release music, and I've been working on music. I have not opened Ableton in 2.5 months.
Yeah, no, it's a problem.
It's just because the project that I'm working on with the Hedge Solo, he's been on the podcast here before, I've talked about him before, is just because it's not the fact that we don't want to do it, it's just the fact that we want to make it so perfect that we're sitting here, that we have the intro, then we've remade it and added things. I think now this is the 4th or 5th time, right? And we've probably spent close to 50, 60 hours of work on this project combined.
Yeah. No, it's painful.
We have, I don't know, 30 seconds, which sounds like a lot, but
in the world of music,
for the song that we're doing, no.
I was going to say, in the world of music, 30 seconds is not that much.
And when you have an intro sequence and that's it, that's nothing. You don't actually have the meat of the song.
Yeah. I mean, it goes to show for a lot of things like that too. It's like, take my books for example. Like, I started this series that I'm currently writing 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Hell, like I wrote the original iteration of the book that I'm currently working on. I wrote that 9 years ago.
Yep.
9 years ago is when I came up with this fucking story, and I'm not even close to publishing it. And my goal was to publish it by August of this year, but like, I'm gonna be real, it's disastrous for me because like my ADHD perfectionist and paralysis is kicking in at the same time. Because I'm just like, okay, on one end, this sounds extremely stupid. On the other end, I love the series. I think it's a great series that would be great if published. But my perfectionist is just kicking in, and I'm like, okay, well, there can't be a single plot hole. There can't be any of this. And like, while I've done good work of eliminating major plot holes, I know there's going to be small plot holes in it. Like there is in everything. Like, no one in history is ever going to find a series of books or movies or anything that doesn't have like a ridiculous amount of plot holes in it. Like,
And even if it does, the story's super simplified, and there's no real actual character development.
there's nothing. There's
Which
no
is
like
basic
major
stuff.
plot. It's like, okay, Johnny goes to school. That's the plot. Like that's it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, but like on any major thing, like stuff like I'm working on stuff like that, it's like, there's always going to be plot holes, and I need to learn to accept that. But my ADHD perfectionist is just like, but this is a plot hole now, so now you have to rewrite 30 chapters, and I'm just like, God fucking damn it.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
I'll tell you this right now. As embarrassed as I am to admit this, I don't think I've admitted this publicly yet. I actually had an entire draft written up for this. It was like 300 pages. And I had to redo all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know why? There's a very specific thing in the books. I can't say what it is before I publish them because I don't want anyone, yoinking the idea, and then, that becomes a problem later on.
Yeah.
But in short, there's a very specific thing in the book. And I use it once at the beginning, and I used it once at the very end. And I never mentioned it again.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that's not a minor plot hole. That's like I fucked up.
Yeah.
So my dumbass, like, it wasn't easy enough for me to just like enter it into a couple chapters because then it would, it wasn't easy for me to enter it into a few chapters because then it would fuck up further stuff, and I would just be creating more and more plot holes. And if I missed any of them, then it's just shitty writing. So I basically just had to delete the entire book, and I'm rewriting it from scratch currently, which is like the most painful thing I've done in a while.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, my ADHD perfectionist kicked in there, and it's kicking in right now. I'm just like, God damn it, this is like actually rough.
Yeah.
But it's that with a lot of things, I feel, because it's like ADHD paralysis is like, and this isn't to discount like what anyone else might go through with other people's mental health, or even people who don't have mental health issues like neurotypical people. Like, I get it, laziness is not a fun thing, but there's easier ways out of laziness than there is out of ADHD paralysis. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot to deal with when it comes to it, and it can be incredibly painful to do most of it.
This is gonna get it. This is a trigger warning. Just gonna put that out there before I may say this. But
What's the trigger warning for?
it's self-harm.
Okay, now go.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't understand why people would want to self-harm, and I would like to keep my personal experiences on that private, but
Yep.
if you start to understand how people get so frustrated and why ADHD people, a lot of them have anger issues because they have a lot of just frustration built up inside of them and they don't know how to fix it. So unfortunately, they tend to blame themselves and potentially begin to harm themselves.
Yeah.
Blaming it basically on it's just them being dumb,
In short,
basically, right?
like, this isn't an insult to anybody who has ADHD. And for anyone who has ADHD listening to this is in no way something that I'm using to insult you, myself, or anybody who has it. Think of ADHD kind of in a way like this, right? A lot of us, we call it we call it a condition, similar to, like, autism or other things like that, right? And autism and all, like, the other stuff are like, while yes, create challenges to overcome in life for a lot of people who have it, ADHD is different, and in a sense different for me. It's in a sense of it, it can act like a disease in some aspects. And what I say when I mean that is, I don't mean like, oh, you have ADHD, you're like, you have a disease. It's like, no, you don't. ADHD, by all definitions, is a condition. It is a mental condition. It is not a disease. But it can act like one in a lot of aspects. And the reason I say that is just because the paralysis, what did you mention earlier? Just now, the self-harm thing.
The self-harm.
Yes. Like, it acts as a disease, the thing. It acts similar to depression. And the reason why it does is because depression can be a subset of ADHD. Like, what people don't realize is ADHD is not just attention deficit hyperactive disorder, or ADD. It's not attention deficit disorder. It's not just a lack of focus. It's like 60 mental health conditions all rolled up into one thing, and that's the problem.
There was a doctor that had a conference in explaining kids and ADHD, right? The problem with people with kids, especially with ADHD, right, is when their bodies are going through these changes and they're going through puberty and things like that. Their body legitimately is missing some of the things that can either help them focus or be happy.
Yeah, like
your brain simply does
shatters.
not provide the chemicals.
Yeah,
it just doesn't.
Like, if you had to think of the brain as a computer, ADHD is basically a program missing its code.
It's like if you made tomato soup, right? Tomato basil soup, and you forgot to add the basil.
Yep. And you just had red paste.
No basil. There's not a touch. It's just red tomato paste.
Yep. But it's like in a sense, if you think of the brain as a computer, ADHD is basically a software missing half of its coding. Like,
yeah, imagine if your drivers were out of date.
literally, that's exactly what it is. Like, ADHD is.
You have a 4090. You have a 4090 and the best PC you can build, but the drivers are stock. You have the day one drivers.
Literally. No, that's exactly what it is. Because, like, the thing is, like, it happens to a lot of people with ADHD. Like, the brain, when it has ADHD, can either underproduce some things, like the hormones for being happy. It can just not produce those. But the brain can also then overproduce everything else. So it's like, oh, let's not produce the happy hormone, but that hormone that gives you fucking anxiety, yeah, here's about 1 million of these fucking things.
Yep.
So it's like, the brain basically, like, ADHD is basically like the brain's regulator. And when it functions normally, like, in normal people, neurotypical people, their brain's regulator works fine. There's no missing code. ADHD is missing half its code, and your brain just does not.
Yeah, and another big part of that people don't understand is a lot of times that also can lead to addiction.
Oh, it absolutely can. Like,
and not just things like not
traditional addictions,
or something like that. No, I'm talking about you could get addicted to weed. People don't often think about weed as an addicting chemical, but to someone who doesn't have the chemicals in their brain, right? The feeling that weed gives you,
because
you can guess.
Well, because
yes,
the
100%.
Thing is, the reason you get stuck on it is because your brain is missing those chemicals. So as soon as your brain's wires get uncrossed by whatever chemical you're using, your brain's like, oh, this is normal. Stick with it. And it's like, no, don't do that. Like, but the thing is as well about ADHD and addiction is, like, one of the most interesting things that I've learned about this, at least in my own opinion, is, like, even non-traditional addictions, like it doesn't even have to be drugs or alcohol or shit. ADHD people can get addicted to literally just about anything that brings them dopamine.
Yeah.
Like, and that's fucking scary, is the thing. Because that addiction could be a fucking person. That addiction could be like some inanimate object that you've just grown a very fond attachment to over like 6 years.
Yeah.
Like whatever the hell kind of reactivates that dopamine.
Yeah, not to get kind of gross, but porn addiction is one of the most common addictions in ADHD people.
Yeah, no, it can be.
It gives them every time you get off, it just gives you that huge dopamine rush of endorphins and stuff like that, and unfortunately, it turns some people into sex addicts.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like it could be literally anything. Like, I'm gonna be honest, it's like, and it's not even like the object or whatever it is itself that could be the addiction, but it could be like the memory tied to it. Well, not even that. I'm say, for example, like, you know, there's a person with ADHD who has like some strange attachment to like a small action figure, right? Now, you know, it's not per se the action figure itself that is like their addiction, but it's the dopamine rush they get from the memory of how they got it or what like memories it brings back. Because say they were like, they met up with like, you know, a friend they really cared about for the first time, and that's what they ended up getting while they were with that friend. For an ADHD person, the rush of dopamine is going to come from looking at that because they're going to be remembering that. So the problem is the second any of that happens, you're fucked. And it's like, you know, if anything were to happen to that for an ADHD person, it's devastating. And it's not like, you know, literally, like, and it's not like, you know, yeah, it's replaceable is the thing, but the memory of the original is not. Because, like, the thing is like, to an ADHD person, yes, like, for me, for example, I'll say this for myself, like, yes, I know everything that I have that's, like, physical is replaceable. It's not, you know, it's not illogical to say that it's not replaceable. But it's, for me as an ADHD person, there are a couple, like, inanimate objects, like, for myself, that I am attached to, and if anything were to happen to them, yeah, it would fuck me up for a little while. And the reason I say it is because, like, it's the tie of the original object to the memory of the original object that would fuck with you.
Yep.
So it's like, you know, what's a good example? This is actually a really good one. I'm not going to mention names or anything, but there is a jacket that I got from someone who is very important to me. And, you know, I've kept it, you know, like, I make sure to take care of it. It's like this really cool jean jacket. I honestly love it. But, you know, I take care of it and so forth because it's like, you know, I know to my ADHD brain, if anything were to happen to it or it got wrecked in any sense, you know, it would wreck me. Like, I'm not just going to be like, oh, well, you know, I can see if I can find a new one real quick. Like, nope, I would crash and burn for a few months, probably.
Yeah, and I think that's why ADHD people are so attracted to video games. Because it gives us that escape of, like, we know how to do something. Like, it sounds dumb and it sounds simple, but, like, we can do something that at least seems smart, or maybe is just super simple, right? And we just know how to do that one thing. Having that skill and not even having that skill, or just having fun playing games with either people or by yourself is just, it's so helpful in de-stressing and stuff like that.
It is, and it's like,
especially to a person that overthinks all the time.
Well, it's also like a secondary escape from reality too. Like, I know a lot of people, this is a type of ADHD that I have when it comes to it, but I use games as a slight escape from reality because the thing is like, you know, everything that, like, my brain overstresses about in real life is daunting. Like, it's hell. And I mean, like, I'm not going to say that, you know, my brain is overstressing about nothing. It's not. Like, I've looked at the facts. Does my brain accelerate them sometimes? Yes. But it's not something to not worry about. So it's like, you know, a lot of, like, ADHD people will use video games or reading books or watching movies. They will use it as an escape from real life because it's like, you know, sometimes the world outside is so daunting. And it's like, you know, think about it this way. Like, a lot of the shit we see in the news on the daily, is like, for a normal person, that's devastating. Like, to just read some of that shit. And for some types of ADHD people, they could read that and it's like, oh my god, the world is ending. Like, for me, I have a more kind of subset of ADHD. I'm more kind of lean towards like the side of like, I see something horrible in the news, but in my head I'm just kind of like, well, it's another Tuesday, because I've seen enough of it that my brain's kind of just like, oh, this is the world. It's not even just desensitization. It's kind of just like, it's not even desensitized. It's just like, my brain actively seeks out these stories now, because I'm just like, all right, well, let's see, you know, what's happened today. Like, you know,
Right.
like any, like, you know, yeah, like if there's like a very common tragedy that occurs left and right, I'm always just like, all right, let's see what's happened today for that same tragedy, because my brain's just kind of come to accept that as, it's like, you know, this is a common thing. Like, this is what happens. And my brain's just like, okay, it's part of the world. So it's like, you know, for some ADHD people like myself, it's like, you know, we expect it. And for other people, it's like, it feels like the world is ending, because it's just like, holy shit.
Yeah. I think we did a good job.
What was that?
I said I think we did a good job. But
Yeah. I mean, we definitely have.
trying to get our points across. Of course, there's so much more that we could talk about with this.
There is.
And
We've still
course,
got
you
roughly
guys
10
have any-
minutes.
Oh, do we? Oh.
Yeah, we've still got about 10 minutes. But I mean, yeah, it's like going from personal experiences to just like the broader ADHD thing. It's another thing entirely for an ADHD person. Like, I want to talk about the outside sources real quick. Like, it's another thing entirely for a non-ADHD person to expect the same things that they are capable of from an ADHD person. And I'm not going to name names here, but a lot of my friends, past and present, you all know who you are. Because either you've reached out to me personally and apologized because you've learned, or you've just felt guilty and never talked to me again. Both of which are, you know, valid reactions, I guess. But there was a lot of people who, like, past and present in my life, who expected things of me that were not physically possible for my brain. But since it was possible for them, they just assumed that I would be able to do that without issue.
Whew, buddy.
Yeah.
Oh, that is such a good point you bring up.
It is. And I mean, like I want to say it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Go ahead. No. You finish your point.
Yeah, like, I just wanted to say, when it came down to a lot of it, is like, you know, people expect ADHD people to do the exact same things they're capable of because their brain is capable of it, and they just aren't well versed in ADHD. Like, to throw in a random example, like, you know, I've had more neurotypical friends. Still neurodivergent, but not, you know, as bad as I am with some of it. But, like, I've had more neurotypical friends kind of just be like, hey, why don't you reach out to me? Like, what the fuck? Why don't you ever message me? And it's like I'm sorry, ADHD is kind of out of sight, out of mind. Like, Oof and I have made jokes about this on the podcast before, but to me, a relationship doesn't change just because I haven't talked to you for 3 years. Like, I cannot talk to you for 6 months, and then I can just shoot the fucking shit with you again. Like, no time has passed, because it just, the time does not register to me. So that ADHD out of sight, out of mind thing is like, am I thinking of you during those times? Yes. But if I don't message you, it's not like I don't want to talk to you anymore. It's like I assume we're still friends. Just the fact that we haven't talked in 6 months is not a problem. Like, Oof and I have joked about this before, but he and I, before we started this podcast, like, we didn't talk for 9 months straight. Like, and our DMs prove it. Our DMs prove it. Like, we can scroll back up to it and see it. To basically where, you know, we have our last conversation, and then roughly 9 months later, we're just like, oh, hey, you exist. Like, and nothing changed. That's the thing. Like, the thing about me and Oof and us both having ADHD in that sense is, like, he and I understand each other. So, like, he and I can go for 9 months or a few weeks or days without talking, and nothing changes between us because we understand that fact of like ADHD paralysis, but also the fact that the relationship between us does not change in our minds, no matter how long it's been since we've talked.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like you were bringing up earlier about how people may not know how much you have to give, right?
Yeah.
This actually relates back to my last relationship that I was in. Uh, I The problem was with my last relationship was because I'm a very independent person, right? There are times I need my own space, right? I need to be alone. I need to just go scream at the ceiling or go stare at it,
Yeah.
for a while and be by myself. Doesn't have to be long, but I just need like a recharge time, right? Or there are certain
I
people
just need to
to
like be
hang out
my own
with
person.
right, that I can recharge with. The problem is the person I was with was very dependent, and I knew that going in, and I still kind of agreed to it.
Yeah.
She was the person that asked me out, and do I regret saying no? To be honest with you, no, because it really helped me learn what I actually want in a relationship.
Yeah.
Right? Versus just jumping into one because you felt guilty. That was
Yeah.
the reason. So, and it's tough because afterwards it was very hard for her to understand how, because it kind of came out of nowhere. Our relationship did not last for very long. So when I said I wanted to leave, it kind of just came, like I said, out of nowhere. But it was just a buildup of I couldn't be that dependent anymore.
Yeah.
I couldn't be that crutch for her, and I didn't want to continue just overstraining myself to the point that I would start to despise her, and then the relationship would get super toxic.
Yeah.
And I didn't want that. Right. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's things that people don't think about, how it can now it's affecting your, not just your school life, but your personal relationships with people.
Yeah, like that's the thing. I don't think a lot of people realize that ADHD just affects every single aspect of your life. Like there's no aspect of the life of an ADHD person that is untouched by their ADHD. Like that, if it happens, it'll come for everything. And I mean, I want to add on one last thing to kind of that experience, but it's like, it doesn't just affect relationships in the way of like, needing to be your own person, but like, even like communication wise, it affects a lot of things. Because it's like, I've had many people in my life, like there's very, very few people that I trust with the things that happen inside my head, with any of my mental health stuff. And I think if I had to boil that number down, it's like 4 people. And those people know who they are. They know that I trust them immensely. But like, that's the thing, is like, to a lot of other people, I won't tell them shit. Like,
yeah,
majority of the people in my life think they have a great handle on who I am. And it's kind of interesting to watch, because they're just like, oh yeah, I know. Like, it's kind of interesting to watch some of the people that I know be like, oh yeah, I know him a lot. I know everything about him. Like, in reality, they have no goddamn idea who I am. Yeah, no. It's interesting to watch that, like how well people are like, oh yeah, I know everything about Lucy, and I'm just like, you know maybe 2% of the person that I really am.
If you have to say you know everything about a person,
yeah, no idea. Like, and the thing is like, I'm not against admitting who is who in my life. Like, I've had people ask me, is like, would you tell me about this stuff? And I'm like, and I tell them straight up, I'm like, no, I would not. Like, you can ask me that question.
That's nothing against.
Like, it's nothing against you.
It's just we're not there.
We're not there, but it's also just, what I want to mention is like how difficult it is for ADHD people to even talk to people or open up to them about certain things.
Yeah, because
like the reason there are 4 people in my life who actually know like the shit that's happened inside my head. Oof being one of them. Like the reason there are only like 4 people in my life who know that is purely, and I mean purely, because I chose to trust them, but also because I knew they could understand. That's the only reason. Like, I have a lot of other friends who will consistently ask me, like, oh, how are you doing, and so forth. And a lot of the time, what I tell them is just a bold-faced lie. And it's like,
I'm
you know,
alright.
yeah,
I'm
like,
fine.
I'm not,
We're
like,
chilling.
here's the thing, I'm not ashamed to admit that I lied to those questions that people ask me.
No.
Like, and I'm very straightforward about it. If someone, like, if any of my friends ever ask me, like, I guarantee you, like, anybody who's watching this right now, if you're a friend of mine or if you're somebody who doesn't know me, ignore this. But if you're a friend of mine, like, if you ever want to know the standing, you can ask me straight up. Like, I'm not going to shame you for wanting to know, and I'm not going to look at you differently for wanting to know. But I'm going to be honest, the answer you get, you might not like. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's just, it's a part of who I am. Like, you know, there are people in my life who I would gladly put, like, my own life, or even, like, the most precious things to me, I would gladly put those in the hands of. And then there are people who I consider friends and who I love as people and who are, like, I genuinely care for. But those people are not people I would tell everything. Like, yeah, there is a line.
The line drawn in the sand.
Like, yeah, like there have been friends of mine, and I mean, they'll know who they are from me just saying this, but they're friends of mine who ask, like, you know, they'll be asking, like, oh, how are you? And, like, and I've straight up said, like, in response to that question, I'm like, you know me well enough to know that I don't respond to that question. And it's because I do not tell people. And it's just, that's a base of who I am. Yeah. So, like, again, it's nothing against people, but I don't think a lot of people realize just how private ADHD people are because of the fact that we get shunned so often for the amount of shit that we deal with. Bless you.
Yeah. I was about to say that one of the biggest reasons is, to wrap it up here, the biggest reasons why we don't talk about it so much and why it's only really I think the ADHD awareness thing is only coming up now is, well, first off, a lot of people go to undiagnosed because they think they're just a bad kid, or
they think they're a bad kid or a bad student, or that they're just really bad at paying attention, and they never think to test for it.
Yeah, so they go untested and have no idea. Or B, they're shunned so far into their experience that they just think it's their own fault. There's something wrong with them.
Yeah.
Which, I'm not gonna. The ADHD is not something wrong with you. Yes, is it something wrong with your brain? Correct. But
it's basically a part of your brain is missing the code it needs to function as a neurotypical. Correct. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's not your fault. Yeah, like, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing you could have done to prevent it. And I mean, it's the same thing for, like, people who have autism. Like, I know parents get told this too. Like, oh, if you didn't vaccinate your kid, they wouldn't have autism or shit like that. It's like, the thing about people who have, like, ADHD, autism, or any of these conditions that are similar to those two things, it's like, it's not your fault. There's nothing that you could have done in your life to prevent having these conditions. It is something that is just genetic, that happens sometimes, and it's something we have to live with. It's a glitch in evolution.
So my question I leave with people, I guess you can take on, is why do we get blamed so much for something that we can prevent?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And I mean, that question can be applied to so many different things too. So it's like, and especially, here's the thing. One thing I want to leave as well alongside that question. If you consider yourself an accepting person, but you have judged someone for any of the things that we've listed today, I want you to think about it. Say, for example, you know, in the question of, like, why should we be shunned for something we have no control over? I want you, like, everyone to take the same question for, like, you know, people of different races, people of different sexualities, different genders, and so forth. And if you've pioneered yourself as an accepting person, but you have shunned people for any of the stuff we listed today, why is one okay, and why is the other not?
Yeah, and I'll fully admit I'm one of those people. I have definitely learned over the years what, definitely through my experience of having it myself, I've learned what is I won't say what's wrong and right, but my own opinion. I've formulated my own opinion based on my own experience.
As
And
everyone does.
I do believe it to be not necessarily all right, but it's pretty accurate. I think it's pretty accurate. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I'll fully admit as well. Like, you know, I'm not perfect. Like, as I
Nope.
grew up, did I
Yeah.
have certain prejudices? Yeah, I grew up as a fucking Catholic.
yeah.
I went to a Catholic school, and that Catholic school was the whole thing of just, you can't be gay, and I'm like, as a kid, I was
Hey.
told that, and I'm like, okay. So for a while,
I grew
you
up
know,
in the
yeah, for a while,
grew up
I
in-
was on, like, you know, a bit of the homophobic side, but like, again,
yeah.
love who you want to love. I don't give a
grew up
shit
in the-
nowadays.
I grew up in the hood, so the F word, F slur was thrown around that like
Yeah,
as a kid. We used to call each other gay all the time. And
Yeah.
the thing is even back then as kids when we were saying that, we weren't saying it as in the offensive way to call
you weren't
you know,
trying to harm
to
people.
hurt
You were just
gay
saying it.
people. Yeah, it's just a word that we would use.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, but like
That's a whole nother conversation.
that is a whole nother conversation. But like the important thing is changing and growing. So like here's the thing: if you have shunned ADHD or autistic people in the past for some of the stuff we've mentioned today, like here's the thing: I'm not blaming you or saying that you're a horrible person for doing so. Because the truth of the matter is that a lot of the time people just don't know, and they blame it on someone's lack of ability. And for some people, yeah, I get it. Some of you may not know that this is caused by ADHD. Some of you might just think like, oh, this is just how this person is. And there's nothing wrong with you either for saying that. But there is something wrong with you if you choose to not try and improve, specifically because you now have this information. So if you choose not to improve and choose to continue to shun people over this, then yes, you have a problem.
Yeah.
But the thing is I just want people
It's
to
like
think about, like, this goes for anything, any sort of difference in people. If you are shunning someone for something they cannot control, why?
Yeah. It's true.
Yeah,
very
like that's just kind of the last question I want to leave for that. What is the reason
And-
behind it? And is that reason
Yeah.
an actual reason to shun somebody? Or are you doing it because you cannot deal with what they like with what they are unable to change?
Yep, because a lot of that can come from intrusive thoughts. My favorite thing to say about intrusive thoughts is, just had it in my head. If you say what if or I could, it does not mean I should.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not what your opinion is. Don't let your intrusive thoughts get to you,
Yeah,
especially when judging other people's character as well.
yeah. And I mean, another thing I want to say about it too is I don't remember what the exact statement of the words is, but your initial thought is not always your opinion. It's what you do. It's your thought after your intrusive thought that really matters. Because a lot of people will see something and have an immediate intrusive thought, and that second opinion that you form right then and there, that's what you truly believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess we'll wrap this up here.
All right. Yeah, we should, because it's 3 a.m.
You need to go
It's
to
3
bed.
a.m.
Yeah. You need to go to bed. I got to finish several projects for tonight. But yeah, as always, we want to say thank you guys for watching. We'll be seeing you all on March 15th. And yeah, just all around, be kinder. Recognize differences in people and, you know, try your best to be understanding. Yeah. But other than that,
you guys
got
know
anything left to say?
You guys know the intro. Yeah, you guys know the outro. Download, you know. We got
Download,
links.
save, share,
We
whatever
do
the fuck the
things.
buttons are. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, and the Amazon device that I can't say because it's currently sitting behind me. And yeah, this time despite the paralysis, I will do my best to actually get some TikToks up. I've got some stuff going on. I've got a Patreon that I'm launching, and I will be putting up podcast bloopers on this, so it'll be fun. But as always, I do hope you guys enjoyed. Oof does as well. And we will be seeing you all in about 15 days. Happy leap year, by the way.
Yeah, indeed.
Peace out, y'all.
See ya.